government. That's why we need a Labor government.
That's right. Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with that contribution from the member for Mount Albert is she did not answer the fundamental question as to whether these tax reductions, these big investments in infrastructure, these improvements in public services would be supported by Labor. She was blank on that fundamental question that we debate in this budget. Mr. Speaker, I would say this is the best budget that this Parliament has seen in more than a generation. It's a budget that shows our economy is growing strongly. It's a budget that delivers better public services. It is a budget that involves the biggest investment in infrastructure that our country has ever seen, and it is a budget that delivers for 1.3 million New Zealand households $26 extra per week. Mr. Speaker, the challenge I would give to members that are interjecting opposite is this. Let's look at New Zealand's vital economic statistics. Let's look at the level of growth and how it compares. 6 straight years of 3% economic growth, and out for the next 4 years, at least 3% growth. Let's look at inflation. When we came to government, inflation was running at over 5% per year, eroding New Zealand families' working base. What this budget shows on that vital statistic is inflation only at 2% and set to stay at that very level. Let's look at one of the most important things. Jacinda Ardern talked about the right to a job. What this budget shows is unemployment under 5% and 170,000 more jobs for New Zealanders over the next 4 years, and unemployment trending down to just 4%. And Mr. Speaker, I look at another statistic like interest rates. It matters for homeowners, it matters for businesses that are investing in jobs. And again, we see that vital statistic at less than 5% and so strong for New Zealand. And Mr. Speaker, I look at an issue like debt. I've stood in this Parliament speaking in budget debates when New Zealand's debt has been over 90% of GDP. That's what I came into Parliament inheriting from a Labor government in the 1980s. And I see in this budget, New Zealand's debt level trended down to only 20% of GDP, and I commend the Minister of Finance for caring about the future and targeting a level of debt of between only 10 and 15% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, I challenge people to look at this budget and line it up with any that have been delivered in this country in the last 25 years and tell me which budget in the last 25 years has had better vital economic statistics for our country, and there is not one. And Mr. Speaker, I say to a member opposite, tell me a country, a country like our own, that's had a better budget than ours. Tell me whether, well, I say to the member, would he rather have the budget of Australia, where they've got substantive debt and increasing unemployment? Would he rather have what you've got in the United Kingdom? Would he rather what they've got in the US? You will not find, and I challenge any member opposite to tell me a country right now that is in better economic shape than New Zealand, and that is another tribute to the success of this budget. And Mr. Speaker, I have to also agree with the commentators who have said, actually, if you look at the families package in this budget, it's big and bold, and on itself justifies a budget. But not only to have the families package, but also have the package that is expanding public services, and the budget that provides for massive growth in infrastructure spend, to have all that, all three of those components in one budget makes it truly standing out. Now, Mr Speaker, I do want to speak about the issues of building and construction. Firstly, this is a budget that provides the $1 billion of funding to support our local authorities to grow the infrastructure, to grow the number of homes that are being built. This is a budget that provides families under pressure with housing costs with over $600 million a year of additional support. And I've seen those silly comments opposite who claim that the accommodation supplement is somehow just goes into the pockets of landlords. Well, you tell that to my constituents. Well, I say this to the member. When this government, increased the benefits for the first time in 40 years, is the member also arguing that when you increase the benefits, that just goes into the hands of the supermarkets and to those that rent property? It is flawed economics. Mr Speaker, what you see from this government with freeing up land supply through the special housing areas, the $4.9 million of money in this budget to support the national policy statement on urban development. If you look at the money and funding to support the RMA reforms that this budget are provided for, no wonder we've been able to achieve the longest and strongest period of new home construction that New Zealand has ever seen, now in its 5th year, and further statistics out today from the building numbers showing that strength. But, Mr Speaker, it is an appropriate time to also scrutinise alternative policies. And this Parliament's heard a lot about KiwiBuild. Well, let me just ask members a few questions about their KiwiBuild policy. Now, Labor says that the KiwiBuild policy of 10,000 homes a year is going to be delivered with 5,000 workers. That's what their policy says. 5,000 workers are going to build 10,000 houses a year. Which planet is the Labor Party on? If you take the current rate of home construction in New Zealand, we're building over 30,000 houses. It's taking 145,000 people to build those homes, Mr Speaker. In other words, based on current construction, you would need 46,000 people to build an additional 10,000 houses a year, and Labor says they can do it with 5,000. That is 1/9 of what anybody in the building and construction sector says that is required. And then you come to the issue of the funding. Labor says you can magically build 100,000 homes with $2 billion. 100,000 homes with $2 billion. Mr Speaker, I can see the pig flying past right now. It is so unrealistic. What they're banking on, Mr Speaker, is what they say. This is what they expect New Zealanders to believe. That if you take the $2 billion, that you spend it on getting the resource consents and the building consents, and you build the infrastructure and you build the houses and you sell the houses, that you can do that 25 times over at 4 months per period, that somehow you build those 100,000 homes. And then you come to the issue and you ask the Labor Party, oh, where is the 100,000 homes going to go? Where is the land? Certainly not going to go at Three Kings. Certainly isn't going to be at Point England. They don't know. They oppose houses adjacent to graveyards. They oppose housing in Mangere. They oppose housing in the West Auckland. They have no idea where the land will come from. They have no idea where the funding will come from. They have no idea where the workers are going to come from. This is not a policy. It is a soundbite. It is an embarrassment. Mr Speaker, this is a budget. This is a budget that, in my view, has gone down better than any I have seen. The fact that the Green Party voted for the Families Package, the New Zealand First Party voted for the Families Package, and, Mr Speaker, it spoke volumes that the Leader of the Opposition, in critiquing the budget, couldn't fill his allotment of time. Well, actually, I've got some sympathy for him. It's damn difficult to criticise such a good budget. And it is no surprise that he couldn't fill his allotted time with his critique of it. Mr Speaker, this is a budget for our times. This is a budget that builds on 8 years of hard graft by New Zealanders in improving our economy. It improves public services, puts money in New Zealand families' pockets, it reduces debt. It's as good as a budget gets.
I'm calling Julianne Genter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.